Welcome into the CBS Sports Network, where we are going to spend the next 60 minutes talking about college basketball recruiting, and a little NBA draft. I'm joined by my 24/7 colleague, Travis Branham, and the first thing on the agenda today is our updated high school rankings in the senior class of 2026. Those debuted yesterday. If you haven't seen them, they are live at 247sports.com, where you can find all of our recruiting coverage for the high school ranks. And the top 10, the newly updated top 10, again, this is the first update since the summer. So Tyron Stokes stays at number 1, Jordan Smith at number 2, Cameron Williams at number 3, followed by Caleb Holt and Jason Crowe Jr. They round out the top 5. Bruce Branch and Anthony Thompson, 6 and 7, Dylan Mingo at 8, Christian Collins at 9, and Duran Rippey at 10. So Trav, let's just break down this top 10. I had said kind of on the record that I said Jordan Smith is, I believe, the best high school basketball player in the country. But Tyron Stokes retained that number 1 spot because he's still the best prospect. I think there are some people who struggled to kind of like see how both things could be true at the same time. And essentially what I meant by that is like, hey, if you need to win a high school basketball game today, Jordan Smith would be the first pick in your draft. If you're talking about who's got the best chance to, potentially be atop the 2027 NBA draft, Tyron Stokes is the guy right now that you say, hey, he's the most talented guy. That's how I would differentiate it. But where are you in that race?
No, I'm right there with you. Tyron is by far the most talented player in all of high school basketball. And that's across all classes right now. Like, in a vacuum, he's in the same type of talent realm as an AJ DeBansa, as a Darren Peterson, and a Cooper Flagg. That's just how talented of a player he is. But as you said, if I need to go win a college basketball game tomorrow, I'm taking Jordan Smith. But another player that I think has entered this same conversation is Caleb Holt. We have him ranked number 4 overall in the class, and he was very much in the conversation this past weekend to get into that number 3 overall spot. But when it comes to long-term upside, Cameron Williams just projects he's going to Duke. He has a tremendous future ahead of him with staying 6'11". He can make shots off the catch and pull. He runs the floor like a gazelle. He's got explosiveness off the ground, and he blocks shots. Just has so many tools and checks so many boxes that, whatever is coming down the line for him, he's going to have a great future ahead of him.
It was a similar dynamic because in my mind, it wasn't really a debate. There was a conversation, albeit a brief one, about the first and second spots, but there was a debate about 3. I mean, myself, you, Bossy, we were all sitting there at Hoop Hall going back and forth. To be candid with you, Cameron Williams, I didn't think was particularly good 2 weeks prior at Hoop Hall West. Now, he was great earlier in the fall at USA Basketball, but I had some concerns. Caleb Holt has been playing really well, so that spot was up for grabs. I also want to talk a little bit about Jason Crowe Jr., because this is someone that, we have been consistently higher than the rest of the industry on, and, taking some shots for that because he plays a rare, if not unique, style of high school where he's got the ball in his hands and he's got extreme volume. Now at Hoop Hall, this guy erupted for, I believe it was 48 points, 31 of which came in the first half. But the most impressive part was 27 points in a 12-minute span in that first half, showing just how potent he is. I want to ask you this, his game's going to have to evolve a bit when he gets to Missouri, right? We know it's not going to be the same ultimate freedom that he has, but how much of his game do you think is going to be translatable upon reaching Mizzou?
I think actually a ton of it is going to be translatable. This is one of the best shot makers to come through high school basketball. And at least since I've been doing this over 10 years now, this kid is very skilled with the ball. He's got great instincts and feel for the game. And the shot making is exceptionally real. Now, will he continue to take 37 shots a game? No. And if you are a box score watcher and you see him score 48 on 37 shots, you're like, wow, that's really all it took for him, or that's how many shots it took for him to get to 48. You're not going to be as impressed. You're going to try to discredit. But if you're at the game, Jason is actively trying to get his teammates involved. And if you saw his team, there's one other Division I basketball player playing with him. And the game we watched was against Abdou Toure, and they really were physical, tough, and athletic in how they guarded him and guarded that team. And he still passed and got other people's shots. And so I think at the collegiate level, he's going to get much more efficient, and the shot making is still going to shine and reign supreme, similar to what we're seeing out of Malik Thomas out of Arkansas this year. He was a similar high volume guard, and also similarly, Darius Acuff. We had him top 5. We caught some heat for it. But you're seeing what happens when you have a knack for putting the ball in the hole. You have elite instincts and you have a great feel with the ball in your hand. Things turn out very well for you in college.
So I like that because I was on the call for that game on Saturday night, and I got up in between games and kind of ran to get something to drink. And one of the fans like grabbed me and he's like, "Hey, what's your comp for Jason Crowe Jr.?" And I was like, I usually need some time to come up with this. And the best, I was like, Katino Mobley. That was like the best I could come up with right off the bat. But he definitely does have like a Malik Thomas style to his game. You know, like the body type's a little different. But I think your point about like how he could be utilized at the next level with Malik Thomas is very fair. One other player that I want to shed some light on, Christian Collins, who maintained his spot in the top 10. On the surface, it looks like this has been like a very steady path for him, right? He's been top 10 for well over a year now. He was in the top 3 at this point last year because we saw a major ascension of his tools. He's another guy who had to keep coming a little bit, but we saw some real growth and there's undeniable upside. Now, the grassroots season, it didn't go as you would expect for a top 3 prospect from a counting stats perspective, right? He wasn't out there getting you 25 every game, but back at Bosco High School in California, St. John Bosco, for his senior season, he's gotten back to showing the stuff that made him a 5-star prospect last year. At every bit of 6'8", he's a twitchy athlete. He's active. He's shown some real growth with his playmaking. I've always been very clear that the best version of Christian Collins is when he's playing hard, he's rebounding, he's defending, he's flying around the floor, and that's got to be his baseline all the time. Have got to be requisites. But we're definitely seeing some offensive growth as well, and I just wanted to take some time to recognize that because I think like sometimes when a player doesn't see a bump in the rankings, they say, "Oh, well, he's gotten better." Yeah, he's gotten better. That's why we still think he's one of the 10 best high school players in the country. And Christian Collins has had a really good high school season so far. Trav, the question I want to ask you, though, is obviously there's 5 people, right, that we're trying to take their opinions into consideration, and we're trying to synthesize multiple variables, including long-term potential, immediate college impact. Those are the 2 most important. If this were solely the Travis Branham rankings, which player would you have even higher, anywhere in the 150?
Oh, this is the easiest easiest question you could have given me. It's Quentin Coleman. He's going to Wake Forest next year. We bumped him up as far as 57 spots in this latest update, in this latest rankings. And this kid, I think he checks so many boxes and is going to be a player not only we talk about next year at Wake Forest, potentially as a sophomore star at Wake Forest, but even as a pro on down the line. He stands 6'4". He's long, he's athletic, he's got great feet. He can move very, very well out on the court, and he's very skilled, a dynamic scorer and playmaker. He plays the game the right way. He's extremely competitive. He's a great defender, knockdown shooter off the catch and pull, makes all the right passes out on the court. I think his ascension, what we saw this summer and where he's at right now, this kid is on a steep upward trajectory, and still he's extremely productive right now, but physically he still has a ways to go. So I think as his body continues to grow and mature, he's only going to continue to make big leaps and bounds in the years ahead.
All right, Quentin Coleman, I think we are significantly higher on him than anyone else in the industry. But it is true. You and Bossy even tweeted he would have him in the McDonald's All-American game if it was solely at his discretion. So Quentin Coleman, you do have more than one fan here in the 24/7 Sports Group. Also, shout out to Chris Washington Jr., who you advocated for, the jumbo ultra athletic big wing who played his way back into the top 50 after a really strong performance at Hoop Hall Classic. Don't go anywhere. We're going to come right back and talk about a couple of these unsigned top 10 guys because there has been some new intel coming out. You're not going to want to miss it next, right here on the CBS Sports Network. Welcome back into the CBS Sports Network. Now, if you were following along yesterday, almost immediately after those updated rankings were released, Travis released his Branham report, which was all the latest intel on every one of the unsigned prospects inside that top 25. Now, again, if you missed any of that, you can go over and check it out on 247sports.com, but don't do it yet. That's a commercial break type of thing. What you're going to want to do now is stay right here, because we've had some, shall we say, evolving intel on some of the best prospects in the country. On last week's show, heading into the Hoop Hall Classic, we wondered aloud whether or not we would hear a commitment from Dylan Mingo. We were kind of expecting that we were on the goal line. Maybe it would happen, maybe it wouldn't. We suspected that Baylor might be a leader, but you sat down with Dylan this weekend. Obviously, the event came and went without an announcement, but now we do expect one in the very near future. What can you tell us both about that, as well as which schools may be trending as of the latest hour in his recruitment?
Yeah, so for a very brief moment after his first game back this season, I spoke with him and he set an announcement date. It was supposed to be for Thursday, January 22nd. And you know what? That was yesterday. Yesterday came and went, and to no avail did he make a decision. But again, by the end of the weekend, it was pretty clear that commitment was getting delayed. And this was not due to indecision of where he wants to go to school. It sounds to be much more logistical oriented in the platform in which he wants to announce it on. However, he's down to 4 schools, and that is North Carolina, Baylor, Penn State, where his brother's currently a freshman on roster, and also Washington. And like I've said time and time again on this show, this race is coming down predominantly to Baylor and North Carolina. You still can't rule out going to Penn State. I would have them classified as third. And as you said, last week, we had pinned Baylor as the favorites. But as we were sitting there at Hoop Hall this weekend, we started getting some rumblings that this thing may be shifting back in North Carolina, back towards North Carolina. They had 2 assistants at the Hoop Hall Classic watching him. And it's notable that Baylor did not have one single representative there all weekend in the 2 games that Dylan Mingo played. So as of today, I now have this classified as a toss-up. The Baylor prediction, crystal ball prediction, has been taken down at 24/7 Sports as the intel has shifted and as this recruitment has shifted. And again, I'm keeping an extremely close eye on North Carolina as we head down the final stretch, and I do anticipate we'll have a decision over the next week or two.
Trav, I don't want to put you on the spot with this, but I think it's a fair question, not just for Mingo, but for any top prospect in this day and age. How much of this is a financial negotiation at this point?
Just about every single recruitment, there's a great emphasis on the financial negotiations, and that is where you see so many of these recruitments shift in different directions as we head down the finish line. Some teams, the negotiations, the price gets too high, and suddenly a leader just immediately drops out. And so that's one of the reasons why you see so much change in this new era of recruiting. So yes, that is something that I believe is going on at this very moment in Dylan Mingo's recruitment, and we're going to see how it all plays out here in the next few days.
All right, Dylan Mingo is a big combo guard with extreme length. He made his season debut at the Hoop Hall Classic, but was clearly not playing at 100%, just trying to get some of the rust out, get acclimated to his new teammates. Now, over the summer with the PSA Cardinals and the EYBL, he established himself as one of the very best guards in the entire country. As I said, good size, extreme length, real playmaking ability, and on both ends of the floor, is capable of playing on or off the ball, has a way of getting to his spots almost at will off the dribble, and he can make things happen on the defensive end of the floor as well. Those long arms, good instincts, can be a real playmaker, and has versatility on that end with his ability to defend multiple positions. All right, another guy who you alluded to earlier has made a subtle rise in the rankings, although when you rise a couple spots up at the top of the class, it's not so subtle, and it's due to a big jump in your game. Caleb Holt has made real strides. He's another one that maybe we were hearing some other schools were making charges in his recruitment. You had previously reported that it was down to 2 schools. What is the very latest on the number 4 ranked prospect in the national class?
Yeah, he's publicly down to 5 schools, and that's Alabama, Arizona, Houston, Kentucky, and Providence. However, this thing is coming down right now to just 2 schools, and that is Arizona and Alabama. What's interesting is Arizona was considered a long shot in this recruitment early on. They got him on a visit this fall, and heading into that visit, it looked like Arizona didn't stand a chance in the recruitment. But coming out of that visit, they made a significant impression on Caleb Holt and have since surged into one of the top candidates. Back in the fall, Kentucky was the heavy favorite. They essentially had him on a silver platter. I think they could have gotten this done weeks ago. However, things have since faded into the background with Holt and Kentucky, and now it's emerged that Alabama and Arizona are the top two. Houston has faded, and Providence is also faded. So as of today, I classify Arizona as the leader, but I still do not anticipate a decision in the near future.
All right, Caleb Holt is, in my opinion, one of the most college-ready players in the country, and that's because he gets it done on both ends of the floor. He's truly an outstanding perimeter defender. He's got the size and strength to have not only the college-ready body, but be multi-positional. He can guard, I think, 1 through 3. He's going to be switchable. He's also going to be able to defend in different types of coverages, which is something we don't often pay enough attention to. Offensively, we've seen some real growth with his shot making. He's known for his motor, his toughness, but the shooting profile has really expanded. He's not only making spot-up threes, but he's making movement threes at prolific prep. As his guard skills continue to evolve, as he continues to transition from, I think more of a wing into a true guard, his upside and his immediate offensive impact is going to continue to grow. But again, the physical tools, the mentality, the two-way impact, I do expect he will be one of the very best freshmen in all of college basketball next year. Trav, I want to ask you about one more unsigned guy since we have an extra minute or two here. Jackson Richardson was someone who did not play this past weekend at the Hoop Hall Classic. He is reportedly out with an injury, undisclosed at this time, but one of the very best athletes in the class. We know he's a high flyer who has worked on expanding the rest of his game. His recruitment, though, is not one that has gotten quite as much national attention, and maybe that's because it's a little bit of a guessing game. What can you tell us about where he is at with his process? And I should also say, younger brother of Jace Richardson, dad Jason Richardson, played in the NBA for years. So yes, it is that Richardson family.
Yeah, he's been a top 25 recruit throughout his entire high school career. He's one we watched very early on, one of the best athletes and defenders in the entire country. But he's had an interesting recruitment. I think a lot of schools assumed he would follow his brother and dad's footsteps and end up at Michigan State. However, Michigan State has not been a factor in this recruitment from the beginning. And so with that, he's now down to a Final Four schools of interesting, essentially a list of 4 schools that you wouldn't anticipate being the Final Four, with Creighton, Ole Miss, Alabama, and USC. And he cut that list back in the fall, and it's been really silent since. In that time frame, he has transferred high schools, and I believe that has played a role. But as of today, this thing remains wide open with all 4 teams. I would have a hard time naming a leader at the very moment. Alabama remains involved with other top recruits that fit a similar mold, like Brandon McCoy and Caleb Holt. USC is one team that is still involved. Creighton is still pushing, but at this moment, it would not surprise me to see a team that is not inside this Final Four come in and get involved and make it push and gain some traction late.
All right. Very interesting stuff. Don't go anywhere. We're going to shift our focus coming up next and talk a little NBA draft. Travis will be back, and we'll be joined by Isaac Trotter. That's coming up in just a few moments on the CBS Sports Network. It's time for a little NBA draft talk. Last week, we talked about the best big men, or some of the big men on the bubble, projecting to the 2026 NBA draft. We're going to continue to do one position each week. And so this week, we're talking about the forwards. I'm joined by Travis Branham and Isaac Trotter. Fellas, the way we are going to do this is we are going to talk about the top 5 forwards on the CBS big board, other than Cam Boozer, because I think we can all agree he's a top 3 lock, unless anyone would like to object. But what we're going to do is I'm going to say, okay, this is where I had them ranked last month. With this month's update coming in the very near future, should they go up or should they go down? I'm going to begin with Caleb Wilson, who was most recently listed as number 4 on the CBS Sports big board. So Trav, I will go to you. Should he go up or should he go down this month?
I'm going to go in the middle. I think he should push. I think he should stay put at this point. He hasn't done enough to go into that top three. And I think this is a player at the next level is going to be at his best when complementing another star alongside him. I don't think he's a focal point player, which would get him into that top three, in my opinion, in this draft. So right now, I have to say push until he improves his offensive game, especially with the shot making becoming more efficient from three.
Trotter, I did that on purpose because when Trav says I'm right, I just want it recorded on national television. But you're up next. Higher or lower?
Yeah, are you trying to get us both to say you're right? Because I'm the same way. I would say push as well. I think 4 is the right spot for him. I did think, though, that there was a chance that he might be able to push Cameron Boozer for like a top 3 pick. I've kind of backed off that. I think the last month has showcased some of the deficiencies of Caleb Wilson's game. I think his superpower is his activity. He never takes a play off. I love that about him, and I think he will impact winning in multiple ways right when he steps onto an NBA court. But the off-ball defense has been a real issue as of late for North Carolina, and I kind of want to reiterate some of what Travis's point is. I don't think there's going to be many times for an NBA team in the next 2 or 3 years where Caleb Wilson is like the driver of your offense. So he's still a terrific prospect, definitely a top 4 or 5 pick for me, but I don't think he has done enough to uproot that top 3 either.
Caleb Wilson is at least 6'9". He's listed at 6'10" this year, but historically he's measured at 6'9" with a 7-foot wingspan. He's an extreme athlete, not just in terms of his bouncing, leaping ability, but in terms of the mobility and fluidity to cover the court virtually effortlessly. And that's where the defensive versatility potential comes in, because he can fly around the court. He's averaging 3 stocks per game. But as we said, there are some processing concerns that we're going to continue to monitor on that end of the floor. And then offensively, we've seen some growth as a passer. He's averaging 3 assists per game. Mid-range master, he loves those shots. How much of that will be translatable to the next level, whether or not he will be able to extend the shooting range, that is all to be determined. All right, guys, Nate Ament was someone who came into college as a top 4 recruit. Most recently, I had him on my big board at 6. But I think we're all probably going to be aligned here on what direction this has gone into. He's currently averaging 15.6 rebounds, 2 assists per game, 1.4 steals, 0.4 blocks. Travis, I will start with you. Is he going to go up or is he going to go down?
I think you need to drop him in this one. I think throughout the course of the season, you've just been waiting for the light bulb to come on, and he has had some good games and some good moments. But he's a player that I think has to have other talent and weapons around him for him to really look his best. And that's what we saw in high school. When he was playing with the team-loaded Virginia team, he had weapons all around him, and he's able to fill in a bunch of different gaps where he's very comfortable doing so, whether it be as a screener, a spot-up shooter on the perimeter, a guy, if you need to get a bucket and there's a mismatch there, you can give it to him and he can go do it. And then defensively, he showed some different tools and IQ and instincts to be a good team defender and serviceable rebounder. Again, that's where he always shined the brightest. And on this team, we are looking at him as a focal point scorer. It hasn't been pretty this season, and a lot of those deficiencies are coming to light right now.
Trotter, up, down, and if down, by how much?
Slightly down. I think that if you're drafting Nate Ament in the lottery, which I think he will go, it won't be because of the film he's put on tape this year at Tennessee. Like, it hasn't been very impressive. You're more just banking on the lottery type upside of size, skill, shooting, defensive versatility. I think the confrontational drives that he started to add to his game lately is certainly a step in the right direction. I think playing with more force and more violence has certainly helped him be a little bit more impactful in SEC play. But it's been rough, and I think that we all can kind of, we all see that at Tennessee. Like, they just don't have great spacing. He's forced to take a ton of tough shots. It hasn't looked pretty, and it's impacting his confidence in the way he plays on both ends of the floor. I still think he's a lottery-type talent, but it has not been pretty for long stretches this year.
Yeah, I think it's very possible that people are jumping off the Nate Ament bandwagon to too great an extent. Like, listen, there have obviously been some fit concerns here. He's someone that I would have described from a positional standpoint as far more 4 than 3, and yet he's played the 3 really exclusively at Tennessee this year. I think that's impacted their spacing. It's impacted his defensive matchups. But at the end of the day, this guy's 6'10". He's nearly ambidextrous inside of 10 feet. He's got great touch, although the shooting hasn't yet hit to the extent that we expected. And I do think his archetype as that kind of combo forward is one that at his size usually pans out in the NBA. So while the season at Tennessee has not gone as people hoped, and I think even fair to say expected, I think people should be cautious about just how far they drop Nate Ament, because he is an undeniable talent. Let's keep it going here and try and speed it up just a bit, guys. Koa Peat, Arizona, number 1 team in the country. He's their starting foreman, has them undefeated, 15.6 rebounds and almost 3 assists per game. On the most recent big board, he was at number 9. Trav, would he go up or down in your book at this next update?
As good as he's been, I would actually do a slight drop, but a lot of that has to do with some of the play of other people in this draft class. Most notably, his teammate Braden Burries is climbing up the boards right now with how he's played over the last month and a half, and also the deficiencies of Koa are now coming to light. I'll never forget, after that first game, every single pundit came screaming Koa Peat's name and how we had him underranked out of high school. But now, as we get more and more sample size, he's exactly what we thought. He's a great player, a guy who's a mismatched four-man. He's really strong. He's athletic. He's skilled with the ball in his hands. He can finish around the rim. He's got a little mid-range game to him. And he's also a good passer and playmaker. And I think that's something we're going to continue to see more out of him, not only this year, but also in the years ahead as he gets into the NBA. But that three-point shooting is pretty glaring. And also teams are now scouting it and getting better prepared for it. So I'd drop him, but just slightly.
Trotter, up or down on Koa Peat at number 9?
Yeah, slightly down. I think there's a lot of these type of hybrid fours. We'll get into a few more of them later that I just like a little bit more. I think my question is can I play him on the ball at the next level? But then if I play him off the ball, can he make enough threes or maybe hurt defenses as a cutter well enough to work? He's a great player. There's no doubt about that. It just kind of feels like an awkward fit, because also defensively, he's a good defender. Is he a game changer defensively? I think those are all questions that scouts are having about Koa right now, but he's still very, very young. There's a lot of runway for him to improve his flaws. And that's one thing you also hear about him is the character's off the charts with him. And he's one of the hardest workers on that Arizona team. You are betting on the fact that he's probably going to get a lot better over the next 2-3 years and shore up some of these deficiencies.
The thing about Koa to me is that he has gotten better at each and every step along the way. When he was a freshman in high school, he led the 3SSB circuit in his first weekend on it in scoring. And we were saying, he's a little bit of an early bloomer. He's already filled out physically. But what he did is he continued to take his body and consequently his athleticism to new levels each step, including this year at Arizona. Now, he's not a shooter, so everybody's going to have concerns about the non-shooting four-man. We'll see if there's any growth to be shown, not just through the season at Arizona, but in the pre-draft process. I think at the end of the day, though, the guy's a winner. He has some playmaking in the front court. I think the thing we don't talk nearly enough about is how good he is playing out of short rolls. And again, the point about the character that you made, Trotter, is just right on. Everybody raves about this guy. And the final point I'll make is that the NBA is getting back to a strong man's game. And so while there's this emphasis on length, in which Koa's fine, he's 6'8" with a 6'11" wingspan, he does have that strong, powerful body that can bang at the NBA level from day one. So going to be very interesting to see where he ends up. Let's keep it going, guys. Michigan has been another one of the very best teams in the country. Yaxel Lendeborg, he's 23 years old, briefly went through the draft process last year, and now he's number 11, or at least he was number 11 last month on the big board. Trav, would you go up or down with Yaxel?
I'd go up on him. Yes, he is 23 years old, but this is the type of player that you're looking for Koa Peat to become in 2 to 3 years or I guess 4 years with how young he is. But he's the type of prototype that you're looking for. A guy that's physical, can play both the 4 and the 3, is really skilled. He's really tough, can score inside and out, and can complement people and help somebody win right away in the NBA next year that's pushing for that playoff contention.
Trotter?
I'm at a push. I think Yaxel is playing the perfect role at Michigan that he will play in the NBA. And I talked to Dusty May about Yaxel's defense, and he thought that Yaxel was a better guard defender than a post defender in the preseason. That's been the exact thing that's stood out to me. He is a terrific multi-positional defender on the perimeter. So to be able to load up in gaps and to be able to guard ones, maybe guard twos, you can go guard big wings, you can slide down and guard fours. If you switch on to fives, that's okay. All of that has been terrific. And then the other thing I like about him, just no turnovers in his profile. 6 turnovers in the last 10 games combined. He's done a terrific job of buying into, getting off the ball quickly, just playing the right way, finding open shots. He doesn't have huge counting stats, but he's impacting winning as much as anybody in college basketball this season.
Yeah, it's ironic because Yaxel hasn't scored 20 points in a game in over a month at this point, right? And we're all still recognizing his value. At last year's combine, he measured 6'8.5" without shoes on, with a massive 7'4" wingspan. And it's just the overall versatility on both ends of the floor that makes him intriguing. Now, because he's so old, at 23 years of age, I don't think teams are going to be very intrigued about the upside. It's going to be about what can he do for us right now. And to your point, Trav, he's got an opportunity to plug a lot of holes because he's a good passer. He takes care of the ball. He's a good rebounder. He defends multiple positions. If he can make open spot up threes, which this year has been a little bit inconsistent, I do think that's a swing skill for him at the NBA level, but will, again, be another one to watch as we trend towards the draft. Guys, the last one is one of my personal favorites. I don't necessarily think he's in the lottery discussion like the previous 4, but Joshua Jefferson at Iowa State, one of the most unique big men in college basketball. He was 30 on the last big board, and at the time he was much higher than anyone else in the industry. I think you've seen projections on him start to go to a similar level. But Trav, I'll go to you first. Do you think 30 is too high or too low for Mr. Jefferson?
No, I think the more we see out of this entire draft class, I think he can go up a little bit higher on him. I absolutely love his IQ for the game, his toughness, and the winning intangibles that he brings to the court, the playmaking, the facilitating, his ability to bang inside and defend multiple positions. I think this guy is an absolute winner. He's continuing to show that at Iowa State this year. So I think his stock is only continuing to rise right now.
Trotter?
2 triple doubles, and the passing is even better than the numbers indicate. Like left-hand dimes, live dribble, one-hand reads to the short corner. Like he has a terrific feel, and I love the fire and the downhill ability that he plays. He's like a linebacker playing basketball, and I really enjoy that physicality that he brings to the floor. And I also think the shooting is there. The jumper looks really clean out of his hand, so I'm up on him. I think Jefferson has rose for me as much as anybody in this process, and he's second right now in Ken Palm's Player of the Year rankings in the country. Like he's kind of still slept on nationally. He's a legit National Player of the Year contender.
Yeah, he keeps saying he's the best player that no one's ever heard of. A terrific front court passer. I agree. The front court shooting is going to be sustainable, so he's going to be able to stretch the floor. We know he's been able to be a productive part of one of college basketball's most impressive and consistent defenses. So lots to like there. About 2.6 stocks per game as of this recording. Could be a guy that at the end of the first round, somebody looks to find an immediate rotation player at a low salary point. All right, guys, thanks as always. You're not going to want to go anywhere at home. We're coming back, and we're going to break down. There's 3 unbeaten teams left in college basketball. We're going to tell you how you can beat all 3. Coming up next, right here on the CBS Sports Network. There are 3 undefeated teams left in college basketball, to be fair, Division I college basketball. And right now, we're going to break down how you can beat any one of them. Let's start with Arizona. Trotter, the floor is yours. What do you have for Tommy Lloyd's club?
Yeah, I'm getting all my pads out, and I am dressing like a football team to try to beat Arizona, because the violence and the physicality that Arizona plays with is unlike many teams in college basketball. I think schematically wise, you're really trying to shorten the game against them. Anytime you run with Arizona and try to get into a track meet, you're just inviting danger. And then I think also in your half-court defense, you have to show bodies against Koa Peat's drives. He's been a little bit more turnover prone here in the Big 12 as teams load up against some of his drives. You better be really physical with their front court combo of Tobe Awaka and Motias Krivas. And then on the other end, your guards better be able to make shots off the bounce, because you're going to see a lot of deep drop coverage, and that opens up the middle of the floor. If your guards can't make those type of middle of the floor jumpers, you're in hot water. But this is a tall task, because you can talk X's and O's regardless, but if you don't have the personnel to go up against one of the meanest most physical and violent teams in college basketball, you have no shot.
All right, I want to piggyback off a couple of those points, because you made a reference to loading up on Koa Peat's drives. I also think you need to load up on his rolls, because when he's rolling, Krivas is ducking in. And at the end of the day, Arizona's math is about beating you in the paint. They're a terrific offensive rebounding team. They've got all those big bodies, and they don't even try and shoot threes. Obviously, that's an overstatement, but they shoot less threes than I think any team, but maybe 3 or 4 in all of college basketball. So that is their Achilles heel. So you take those points away, or you try and play them as even as you can by getting back in transition, by building a wall and making them get to the second side of the floor, by not getting, I think this is huge, not allowing their bigs to seal you, I think is absolutely vital. And then offensively, you talked about needing the personnel, being the guards being able to make shots off the dribble. How about this? I think if you have bigs who can shoot, if you have stretch bigs, that is problematic for Arizona, because they do want to play in those deep drops. And if you can pull them away from the basket, get them away from their comfort zone, opens up the lane a little bit. Even if not, the math changes, but you can potentially get downhill if you have guys who can make those mid-range jumpers. I think that is a lot how you have to attack an Arizona team. Again, their math is all about beating you in the paint, and they're willing to concede that they're not going to shoot many threes at all. All right, let's talk about Nebraska. Fred Hoiberg is my pick for the coach of the year, certainly. Trotter, these guys share it extremely well. They never turn it over, and that is what I think the part of this team that we don't talk enough about is how high their assist rate is and how low their turnovers are. Just on sheer logic, a team that passes the ball that much more frequently than anyone else should turn it over, but they don't. And similarly, they shoot a ton of threes. They shoot at a really high percentage. That should tell you that they should have a variance in their outcomes. But again, they don't. A team that shoots that many threes should be more susceptible to losses, and yet they're undefeated. So how do you beat this team?
I think defensively, it does start with your front court players have to be really mobile, and they have to communicate as well as they have all year long, because Nebraska spreads you out at such a high level. They use rink mast as that, 5-out hub with dribble handoffs. And I think a lot of teams right now are trying to switch everything against Nebraska because their off-ball actions are so layered and so terrific. But when you do that, that just makes it very, very hard, because if you bust one switch, they have a lot of counters for backdoor layups. They have great shooting all over the floor. They space it very, very well. So I think your bigs have to be mobile. They have to be active. They have to switch everything at a very, very high level. And then offensively against Nebraska, you have to play in the middle third of the floor. That really limits how they can trap you, because they're going to put 2 to the ball a lot. If you have to play in the middle third of the floor. And Nebraska's secret sauce this year defensively is they give up a lot of threes. That lacks context. Nebraska is one of the elite teams in the country at limiting unguarded catch and shoot threes. What does that mean? They're leaving you with taking rushed, contested threes at the end of the shot clock. How to avoid that? You've got to play in the middle third of the floor, or you're in really, really hot water against one of the most well-coached teams in the sport this season.
All right. I think that is spot on, and I want to expand on that just a little bit. I think the reason you need to play in the middle third of the floor is they're trying to push you to the sidelines. They're trying to push you to the sidelines and then just really load to the ball. With rink mast at the 5, they don't have a prototypical shot blocker, so they're going to early help, and they are as good as a defensive team as there is in college basketball at defending post-ups, which is very counterintuitive because they don't have a shot blocker. So that means if you do get to push to the sideline, you've got to skip it and get to the second side of the floor. The reason why they force those really low shooting percentages from behind the 3-point line, even though they're giving up a lot of them, is they by design run past you on their closeouts. They do flyby closeouts, which means they're jumping right past you. So there's an opportunity, if you're patient enough and you can get to that second side of the floor, to attack a closeout and play through there. I also think there's an opportunity to play through the post, get to the second side of the floor, attack a closeout and play through there. But it's going to take a really disciplined offensive attack that's able to make a second and third play in the possession, because this is a Nebraska defense that we don't talk enough about. They are, for their personnel, they are exceptional, and their rotations are spot on because of their continuity. This is just a poster board for player retention and the merits of it in terms of developing cohesiveness on both ends of the floor. So I do think you're spot on with that, and figuring out how to handle their defense is a part of it that maybe we're not talking enough about, because everyone is very intrigued, rightfully so, on how well they pass it, how well they share it, how well they space it, how well they shoot it from all 5 positions on the floor. All right, the last undefeated team in all of college basketball is Miami of Ohio. And Trotter, I want to give Travis Steele a whole lot of credit here because he was the head coach at Xavier 4 years ago. He's really reinvented himself here at Miami of Ohio. And I'll tell you this, not only are these guys undefeated, this is also like fun basketball. They play with great pace. They play 5 out. Everybody can shoot the ball. And if you like offense, you are going to enjoy this product. So if you're in that Miami, Ohio area, buy a ticket because this is good theater. Now, they've had some close games as of late. How are teams playing with them, and how do you get over the hump and give Miami of Ohio their first loss of the season?
Man, this is a tough team to guard. You know, I think the pick and roll offense that they have is terrific. I'm not sure there's one pick and roll coverage that works best against this group. I would go into this trying to maybe switch everything and force them to play isolation basketball. Now, that's easier said than done. Peter Suter has been unbelievable this year in isolation, but I'm going to try to force them to play more isolation ball because they're so scary when the ball gets moving and popping. I'd also mix in some hard hedges and try to heat the ball up a little bit and try to force some turnovers against them because I think they're a little bit susceptible in the open floor. And then on the other end, offensively against Miami, Ohio, you just have to generate paint touches. Their one flaw this year that I'm kind of curious to see how it scales up, down the road and if they make the NCAA tournament. Teams have really gouged them at the rim. Teams are shooting 63% at the rim this year if they ranked in the top 200. So they don't have a great rim protector. They don't have unbelievable defense. But I will say this, they have one awesome defender, Ian Elmer. If you haven't watched him play, just a terrific, active, smart, tough, dependable defender. I'm doing everything in my power to get him out of the play and attack other guys because anytime you go after Ian Elmer, bad things tend to happen for your offense.
Here are some offensive analytics for Miami of Ohio. They are first in the country in effective field goal percentage. They shoot 39% from behind the three-point line, and 46% of their total field goal attempts are from behind the arc. And then because they space you so effectively, it ends up leaving the paint open. So they're shooting, how about this, 62% on two-point field goals, which is just really, really impressive. And they do play relatively fast. I think the key to playing them is, listen, they're going to score. So you've got to score too. I mean, you mentioned Elmer. He's a great defensively, but analytically, this team is not elite defensively. And we've seen teams put up points against them. So I think you've got to make things as hard as you can against them, but recognize hey, they're going to make some shots. They're going to score the ball. We've got to continue to score with them. Got to continue to space them out and put points on the board and not get deflated. Now, defensively, how do you take away their threes? It starts in transition defense. And then I think the key is you have to have the responsibility to guard your own man. We don't want to be put in long closeout situations. We want to stunt and get back to our shooters, force them to make ideally contested twos. I think that is the best recipe possible. But again, Travis Steele, salutes to you, my man. You are doing a heck of a job, and it is a fun team to watch at Miami of Ohio. All right, Trotter, thanks as always, my friend. We will be back next week for far more, but don't go anywhere. I've got one final take coming up right here on the CBS Sports Network. Charles Bediako hasn't played for the University of Alabama in almost 3 seasons, but this Saturday against Tennessee, he may very well take the court again, even though he's played in the G League for the last 3 years. How is this possible? Well, because a judge in Alabama granted him a temporary restraining order against the NCAA after they blocked his attempt to get midseason eligibility. And now, presumably, he may play. Here's the thing. There's a lot of opinions on this, and frankly, I don't like it. I don't like the state of the NCAA, but here's what you need to know. Don't blame Nate Oates. His only job is to win games. That is what he is paid for. Anybody who's blaming him for the integrity of the game needs to understand what college coaches are charged to do and what they are ultimately judged for. Now, we've got lots more on this. You can visit the College Basketball CBS Sports YouTube page, where Matt Norlander and I talked about it extensively on the Eye on College Basketball podcast.